Hello, everyone.
How are you?
I don't know how long this runoff music plays. Welcome once again to the Che Day After Talk Tea with Che and Shai. Uh, this is Che Commodore. My name is Shai born Turkistan. And Che has just appeared again on Ari Melber's fine program, The Beat with Ari Melber on MSNBC. How you doing? What are you drinking?
Unfortunately, I'm drinking water, not tea. I guess you can call it the tea of the Great Lakes or the tea of your Arrowhead Lake. But no.
Hopefully, the tea of the Great Lakes is not too much of a tea, and it's actually just water.
Oh, yes, exactly right. What are you drinking?
I am having Captain Picard's favorite, of course,
Oh, Earl
Earl
Grey.
Grey. Earl
Yeah,
Grey, yes.
yes, that's actually true. You know, I thought at the time that it was bizarre that Captain Picard was, as a Frenchman, was so into Earl Grey. But in Paris, actually, in France, when I've been there, like Earl Grey is actually the tea. It is very, very popular.
Oh, is it?
It is. It's very, very popular. It goes very well with Madeleine cookies,
Mhm.
sort of French cookies and pastries. Because of its particular hearty sort of nature. But yeah, it is very, very popular.
I always assumed that they just drank those fine international coffees that we saw the commercials for.
Right.
Right.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Because of Jean-Luc.
Right. There was like a French roast. There was an Italian blend. Yeah,
Right.
there were different international coffees. This is like, yeah, those. You remember that very well. But I guess we should talk about the segment real quick.
Yeah, you were talking about just how liberal or progressive President Biden is versus his former
Right.
opponent, Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few people in DC who are kind of amazed at how liberal Biden has been. They actually thought he would be far more moderate than he's turned out to be. Um, they're surprised at the scale of the programs that he's passing. They're surprised at the ambition of the programs he's passing. And also the commitment to workers. I mean, he is really kind of going out. The White House is really very strongly supporting the Amazon union push in Alabama. I think we talked about that with Ari about how Bernie went down to Alabama very much with the blessing of the Biden White House. Biden White House has fully gotten behind this in a way that is very rare. I cannot remember the last time a president has gotten so heavily involved in a labor dispute. I think you have to go back to John F. Kennedy and the steelworkers dispute of the early '60s, where he very much intervened on the side of the steelworkers and said, my father always told me all businessmen were SOBs, and so which is an interesting fact that his father was a businessman, and if you read about Ambassador Joseph Kennedy, quite the SOB in many ways.
Why do you think it's so surprising to so many people in Washington? Because especially back in the 2016 campaign, when we were always discussing the differences or actual lack of differences between Clinton and Sanders,
Right.
We always like to roll out the fact that their voting record matched 97%
Correct.
of the time. And in some cases, Hillary could have been considered more liberal than
Bernie, yeah.
Bernie
Right.
Sanders.
Some people don't. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly on gun control.
Yeah.
So why has it shocked so many people that Joe Biden, who is a centrist, but a centrist that has been moving with the center since the center of the country, despite the polarization, is essentially moving progressive.
Right.
Why are people surprised that he has moved
So
steadily to the left? Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with the experience of the last two Democratic presidencies. Both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama had very different approaches. And I
right. You talked about the pro-business sort of aspects of their presidency.
Both of them really believed that you could work cooperatively with corporations to get better outcome for workers. And there was really a history of business and the Democratic Party that kind of clearly had an alliance, I would say, over the last 30 years. I mean, you go back to the Clinton era, It really began with Robert Rubin, who was Secretary of Treasury. His deputy, then Larry Summers, Timothy Geithner, also was part of that Treasury Department. They had a very close relationship with Wall Street. And that led to them sort of saying we should, not restrain Wall Street. We should work with Wall Street. And that meant, not regulating derivatives, famously. That led to Glass-Steagall, which led in turn to the bailouts and the populist turn. So the Wall Street-Clinton marriage turned very, very sour. I mean, I remember Bill Clinton appearing on Stephanopoulos' show in 2010 saying that he was really wrong to listen to Bob Rubin about derivatives. And
well, let's do a little bit of fact checking on that. I believe Glass-Steagall would have been revoked. I believe it was veto proof, correct?
Right. Yes.
At the time, so Clinton really had no choice but
to sign that. Yeah, yeah. But also, I think one of the things about Glass-Steagall is that people forget that the Glass-Steagall institutions were the ones that did not actually fail. You know, it was Lehman Brothers. It was like the non-Glass-Steagall institutions that failed. The problem that Glass-Steagall presented was it created institutions that were too big to fail, that had to be bailed out proactively in case
when the other institutions failed.
Right. So the size of the bailouts really came out as a result of Glass-Steagall. Now, I personally have always believed that if Al Gore had been elected, as he should have been in 2000, there would have been no financial crisis, even with all of the Clinton deregulation put in place. I think during the summer of assurances in 2008, what Gore would have done is he would have done a backyard, or like a quiet version of CARP, where he would have gone in, taken out sort of the bad money and replaced it with good money. Now that's, you can debate the hypotheticals of that. I just kind of have I don't think that's necessarily the case. But I do.
And in the summer of 2001, he might have paid attention to his intelligence reports as well.
Right. The same exact possibility was definitely true. There was a very famously strategy for going after bin Laden that the Bush administration did not pursue.
Because at the time they were trying to turn their attentions towards villainizing China.
Right, exactly.
Which is a playbook that Trump went back to.
Yeah, and also Saddam Hussein, which they never really went off that playbook. But thinking about it in those terms, politically, there's no question. The alliance with Wall Street under Bill Clinton went sour, and the alliance with Wall Street under Barack Obama went sour. And Barack Obama also had an alliance, I would argue, with Silicon Valley. I remember very much that Obama with the open collar really looked like a Silicon Valley tech exec. Assuming Silicon Valley ever had an African American CEO. I think we're still waiting for that.
Yeah. Well, he definitely had a lot of faith that corporations would do the right thing. He put a lot of faith into the health insurance industry.
Right.
That's partly why the public option was scuttled, I believe.
Right.
That and Joe Lieberman.
Well, I think that was Joe Lieberman was really more responsible for that. His personal anger at the Democratic Party. That's a whole other Bermuda Triangle of human emotion to really tackle what happened there with Joe Lieberman's public option. But yeah, I think that there was a real. I'll talk about Obama's digital wizardry of his campaign. Silicon Valley was very into the Obama environmental initiatives and the investments in green technology in particular. They loved those. They shared his progressive vision. All of those things really led to an alliance between Silicon Valley and the Obama administration that also went sour. Mark Zuckerberg basically didn't care about all the stuff that was being put out on Facebook. He was happy to take those checks, and then he announced after Trump won a victory that he helped create that maybe he'll run for president himself. Jack Dorsey.
Did he? I completely missed that.
Yeah, I remember that in November of 2016, he floated the idea that maybe he'll run now. For president.
Was that where every billionaire was saying that they were going to run for president?
Yes, that was part of that. That was part of that.
Mark Cuban and
Well, Jack Dorsey, if you know, was another one who basically was on Joe Rogan's show when he was pointing out all the lies and the racist and sexist tweets of Donald Trump. Said, "Oh, he's the same as Barack Obama." Just absolutely refused to take any responsibility for this. So I think that the Democratic love affair with Silicon Valley died completely. But there was also, I remember really in 2011, the Democratic grassroots shared this same love of Silicon Valley, if you remember. During Occupy Wall Street in 2011, Steve Jobs died, if you remember, during those protests.
Sure.
And I remember people at Occupy Wall Street paid homage to him. And he was held up as the opposite of the Wall Street execs, that he was actually creating something that people really needed. It was very much kind of the same impulse that led Obama to bail out the auto industry. There was a sense that, that the Silicon Valley was kind of the new manufacturers of the time, and they're the good capitalists, and Wall Street is the bad capitalists. And one thing, I think in retrospect that Bernie Sanders kind of understood, mainly because he was an outsider. He was never part of the mainstream party, was that he kind of understood that corporations like Silicon Valley or Wall Street, they're about their bottom line. They're about making money for themselves, and as much as they talk about helping people or doing the right thing, they can't really be trusted to do so. So I think that sort of is a paradigm change. And I think that's something that Biden has very much picked up on. I think he saw what happened with Obama. I think he saw what happened with Bill Clinton. He was a senator and a vice president in both cases. He was a strong ally of both presidents. I think that he basically carried water for the credit card industry for his entire term as a senator from Delaware. So I think he was always sympathetic to this Obama-Clinton idea, but I think he recognized that the world has changed. And
he's reached the no F's given stage of his life, and he's also living by the maxim 5 times bitten, 6 times shy, with regards to working with the corporations.
Yeah, and one of the things that Robert Caro, the biographer for LBJ, said, he said that everyone talks about Lawrence Acton's maxim, power corrupts. Not so power corrupts absolutely. He said that studying LBJ, he kind of realized that power also reveals. It reveals what was kind of always down there, what was in there. And that was very true for LBJ and civil rights. It kind of revealed what he really felt about these things and who he really was.
Are you paraphrasing Dr. Erskine from Captain America: First Avenger?
Well, did he actually say that? Oh, I think you're right.
He's saying that's what the super soldier serum would do. It would reveal and enhance what was already there.
Right. Yeah. So, I guess that's a whole other tangent. But yes, that's exactly right. It is correct. Like power is like a super soldier serum. It reveals what's already there.
Yeah. It's interesting that when you were describing sort of the tendency of Occupy Wall Street to put on a pillar, Steve Jobs on a pillar, and because there is this libertarian streak that exists both on the far left and on the far right of the political spectrum.
Right. Yeah, there is, and there was also like a very strong. I remember it very, very well. In 2011, there was a sense that Wall Street are a bunch of paper pushers. They are a bunch of people who don't produce anything. They make money off of other people's work, et cetera, et cetera. While Silicon Valley, like they're the real creators, they're the real producers. I think very much a piece of that time, and I would encourage all 5 people, listening to this podcast or video to do this.
You think we're up to 5? Fantastic.
Maybe, yeah. But is the 2 works by Aaron Sorkin on Silicon Valley, Social Network and Steve Jobs. Sorkin really hates Zuckerberg. There is, I think Slash Film said it best, that that Social Network is basically a super villain origin film. And if you contrast that, you can see that that Steve Jobs was somebody he really did admire, despite all the flaws.
Oh yeah,
and he there's a
see that in a lot of his shows, like Sports Night and Studio 60 and Newsroom. Aaron Sorkin loves the idea of the hero corporate leader.
Right.
It was Jane Fonda in Studio 60. It was it's Jane Fonda in Newsroom.
Right.
Other people in Studio 60, and he just loves the idea of some ultra rich corporate leader suddenly having a wave of conscience and doing the right thing.
Yeah, and one of the great, there's a great line in the Steve Jobs movie where Kate Winslet says about Jobs, you didn't care how much people made, you cared about what they made. That was very much, I think Sorkin as a writer and as an artist saw something of himself in Jobs, as this creator. And I don't think he saw anything of himself in Zuckerberg. I think he saw Zuckerberg as the opposite of everything that everything that he hated. that movie. Both of but I think that Steve Jobs movie was terribly underrated. By the way, I mean I think Social Network is, I guess, properly rated. It's kind of viewed as a great
Hmm.
classic of the last 10 years. But I think both of those are very interesting sort of takes on the capitalism really of the Obama era. The view that there were good capitalists and there were bad capitalists.
You're
Um,
talking about you love the Ashton Kutcher Jobs movie, right? Is that
I don't
correct?
think I've ever seen that. But I remember being heartbroken that it actually it made more money at the box office than the Sorkin's Jobs movie.
Hmm. With
You know,
Michael.
and there were a lot of people wondering like why that Jobs movie that Sorkin made did not make any money. I don't think it was well promoted. I think at the time, I also think that people sort of felt they knew a lot about Jobs. Well, I think people didn't feel like they knew as much about Facebook. I think that was a factor. But I also think that the people who loved Steve Jobs felt that this was a hatchet job, and the people who hated Steve Jobs felt it was basically an argument for statehood.
Right.
You know? I mean, the movie basically ends. Spoiler alert for Steve Jobs. It ends with him going on stage, and Danny Boyle, the director, bathes Steve Jobs in this kind of angelic light as he walks on stage for the iMac presentation.
Right.
Uh,
Which is exactly what Steve Jobs did for himself in real life. He
you're
would
right.
bathe himself in an angelic light against a black
Correct.
background.
Exactly right. But yeah, that's basically. So I think that there was all these cultural changes, and I think Biden has clearly broken with that. I think that Bernie clearly had a factor in breaking with all of that. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think that that's I think that that's basically sort of the gist of why I think people view Biden's left return as very different than Bernie's. I mean,
Right.
than what was expected. I think people
No,
were
I liked that you talked about like the biggest losers, the most influential losers. Although you didn't quite go into what Goldwater's legacy of losing was
No,
exactly.
no. I mean, he was a consequential loser. There was no question. I mean, I think that people would argue, and I would argue that it was not a positive legacy, but it was a consequence. I don't think
Just
it
for
was.
people who might have been hoping you would say it on MSNBC, he basically started the Southern strategy, correct?
Yeah, well, because he was. People forget something. Goldwater was actually pro civil rights, and then
Mhm.
when he ran for president, he actually changed his position to an anti-civil rights position because he realized that there was all this advantage to be gained by doing
Right.
this.
He
Uh,
did as John Stewart said of McCain back in 2004. He ran to a crazy baseland.
yes, he did. I mean, there was a story that William F. Buckley, in the 1970s, would tell people, it makes me very uncomfortable that so many of our subscribers of the National Review magazine are from Arkansas. Like he kind of completely, I mean, he knew why they were subscribers. He knew what that was all about,
Sure.
and he was happy to get their subscriptions in. And then Buckley and race is a whole other story. It's a very, very long and complicated one. Not a good one, actually. Um,
Yeah.
but, uh, but yeah, but I do think in terms of consequential losers, there are three. There's Bernie Sanders, there's Howard Dean, and there's Barry Goldwater. Dean's a little bit different than the other two. He kind of created the entire structure of contemporary politics in many ways. The internet, the grassroots fundraising, the idea of developing a message based on grassroots input. Lots of people, Obama obviously used that. Trump used that, actually, I would argue, as well. In a
Oh,
different,
sure.
but Dean was a very consequential loser in what he did in 2004. Goldwater and Sanders, I think, are much more similar. In different directions. I think Sanders' vision is very humane, and Goldwater's
Right.
vision ultimately is very inhumane.
Right.
Uh,
Goldwater and Sanders more philosophical. Dean's was more of a
right.
procedural, operational
Operate,
revolution.
yeah, and communications and structure. But
Since I know your fan base includes a lot of cinephiles, what failed film do you feel is hugely influential despite failing?
well, the film franchise that never launched, that I regret never launched, was a Master Commander franchise. I think I think we
Yes.
both agree on that, but I don't think it's been very influential.
My fourth favorite Star Trek movie, Master and
Right.
Commander.
Yeah, it's a great, great movie. I'm trying to think of what is a failed film franchise or film movie. I mean, there's a lot of movies that were kind of that have gone up to tremendous cult status. And there's a lot of movies like that have done that. I think what is the biggest failure that's now kind of considered a major success? Because for some reason, when I think about great flops, Master Commando is like the first one I think of. Like it was a franchise, it was flop, but I don't think it was influential in any way.
Yeah, I don't have an answer here.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe it's
there's
not.
there was a very
What was
obvious
was it Equilibrium?
with
There were a
Christian Bale.
couple. Yeah, a couple, and was there a 13th Floor or something with Jennifer Jason Leigh?
Well, no, yes, there was 13th Floor. There was a bunch of
Maybe
movies. What?
Johnny Mnemonic might be considered a very influential failure.
Yes, I think that probably that might be an influential failure. I think what's interesting is that it's a good question. It's something I gotta have to think about. I do not off the top of my head.
We can come back to it on the next broadcast.
Yes, I think we can definitely do that.
But was there anything else you wanted to discuss about today's show that you didn't feel you got to address on the air?
No, I think that that's pretty much sums it. And
did you feel bad that you got left out of the Dark Knight discussion in the previous segment?
I'm sure I did. Yeah, that is not that a hugely influential movie, but was understood at the time to be a hugely influential movie at the time.
Right.
It had massive implications. What's a movie, by the way, that was very influential? It was a box office hit, but I would say Last of the Mohicans by Michael Mann. That movie turned out to be very influential in the 90s. Braveheart was largely based on that as well. There was a whole slew of movies of people running through the woods.
Right. Those were the movies that taught us that men could get away with unbuttoning the third button on their shirt.
Right. Yes, that's exactly right. That was a one movie. But I am thinking about which one was very influential that kind of has been forgotten about. I feel like there is a very obvious answer that we're missing. And I'm thinking about Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh well, but actually, can those be considered to be failed because they had such low budgets? They more than made their money back.
They did make their money back.
Like Evil Dead and all the like.
Oh yeah, but Evil Dead was hugely influential, and Evil Dead 2 was hugely influential, and I would argue Darkman was actually very influential.
That could be it. Actually, Darkman seems to get a lot of referential love in modern pop culture.
That is a movie that was very, very influential. Darkman.
If only for the influence on the Mission Impossible franchise, Darkman deserves.
Yes, it does. It definitely, among many other things. But yeah, I think that's definitely an influential movie. But yeah, I think we have to think about, like, in terms of movie flops, like famous flops that had massive influence. I think that's definitely one. Oh, you know what's a major movie flop? Now I'm thinking of one that had massive influence. This is Spinal Tap.
Did that movie flop?
Yes, it was a huge flop, and in fact, there were many years that Michael McKean and Christopher Guest and Rob Reiner were asked, "Would you ever do a sequel?" And he goes, "That movie when you make a movie that loses that much money, no one's ever going to do a sequel."
But you're absolutely right. That style of mockumentary filmmaking made The Office, made Parks and Rec, Modern Family.
Waiting for Guffman came out of that. It just so many things came out of that, and that was a huge critical flop. It was kind of this underground film that people sort of talked about and would reference. But it was. I mean, I remember when The Simpsons had Spinal Tap. Spinal Tap obviously is an actual band in the Simpsons world. If people don't realize that, but if people thought that was really interesting, that like this movie from the '80s was now gaining this cultural vitality almost a decade later. So I would say, this is Spinal Tap would be my vote.
Well, of course, Harry Shearer was a regular voice on
The Simpsons. Yeah, absolutely.
On The Simpsons. So of course.
Yeah, but Stonehenge and everything that movie did. But
see, I knew you would come up with an influential film flop at some point. Yeah. So Bernie Sanders this is Spinal Tap.
Right.
On politics.
Yeah, and I would argue this is Spinal Tap, the greatest rock and roll musical of all time. I'll put that out there as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
Is that true? No,
I don't know.
no
I feel like
Jesus
the
Christ,
rock and roll
no,
movement was a very
no
bad.
Starlight Express.
No, I'm not gonna see Sorry Press. No. Anyway,
All
but I
right.
have to go get vaccinated. So
Yes, congratulations. Which one are you getting?
who knows? They're not gonna
Oh,
show
you don't
up.
know which one you're getting.
I think it was either Pfizer or Moderna. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
As
know
you know,
which one.
I just got Moderna on Saturday, and I spent 3 days in a fair amount of discomfort, but I'm fine now. The secret is just hydration. So
Right.
drink more water than you think you can hold,
Yes.
and
Good advice.
it'll help.
Definitely for all the 5 people watching this YouTube video.
Yes,
Get vaccinated.
we're doing the CDC's work here.
That's right. All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot,
All
Charlie.
right. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye. Bye.